All right, we're talking with Army veteran Patrick Nelson, founder of Loyalty Point Leadership. Patrick, welcome to the show. Looking forward to hearing some of the great things you're doing. Before we talk about all that, take us back. Tell us what you did in the Army.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. It's great to be here. I guess like a lot of us older veterans, we got to kind of wind that clock back a ways. I grew up in rural Minnesota, didn't have a great childhood. And so my junior year of high school, I had heard these other guys talking about they were joining the National Guard and they were going to get to go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for the summer. And I was like, wait a second, I can get out of town. Like that'd be my first airplane flight and everything. So I was like, sign me up. I had no idea what I was getting into. So, I did basic training between my junior and senior year of high school. I came back, graduated high school, barely, went to AIT, and then, stumbled my way into small community college in rural Minnesota, no real direction in life.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 weeks into the first semester, 9/11 happened. And 2 days later, I went to the recruiter's office, active duty, and said, I'm in the National Guard now, but I want to go active duty. How can I do that? And yeah, like a lot of people did, actually, I found out because they sent basically everybody coming from a reserve or National Guard component wanting to go active, sent us all down to Fort Jackson, South Carolina,
Huh.
for about 3 to 4 weeks of in processing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I obviously already had my basic and AIT done, and so I got shipped out to a unit in Germany. Babenhausen, Germany. It was the 41st Field Artillery Brigade. I was a 13 Bravo by trade. So in the Army, that's a cannon crew member on a howitzer. I
Uh-huh.
show up to this unit. It's an MLRS unit. They're shooting rockets. They don't have my job there. So I get assigned as a command driver at the brigade level.
Huh.
Now, I didn't drop out of college, after 9/11 to make sure the colonel's coffee was hot and, drive him around. And so I was pretty disappointed, but we were at a field training exercise a few months in when I first got there, and I saw these guys parachuting out of the back of a Chinook, and I looked up, I was like, man, that's the stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
My first sergeant happened to be standing next to me. He had great connections. And so as an E3 in the Army, I submitted a request to get reassigned, which is virtually, right, it's unheard of.
Right.
And I got reassigned down to the 173rd Airborne Brigade based in Vicenza, Italy. They sent me to airborne school, and the rest is history. Iraq for 12 months, Afghanistan for 12 months, Afghanistan again for 15 months, and then left the Army.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't every E3 want to get in the Army want to get transferred somewhere else?
Man, I tell you what, my first sergeant definitely had some big strings to pull because he made it happen.
Well, that's awesome. And then so on your way out of the Army, was it planned? Did it come on sudden? Tell us about your transition.
Yeah, so it actually, I'd reenlisted twice. And on my first deployment to Afghanistan, so my second deployment overall, I got wounded. Peppered in the back some shrapnel, some small holes. It was nothing too serious. Bounced back pretty quick. And it was like 2 years later, we're getting ready to deploy again. And physically, I kind of just started to feel like the old man. I think I was
Mm.
it's maybe 24, but you got these young 18, 19-year-old studs coming around. I felt like they're running circles around me, and I'm complaining of back pain. Um, so fortunately, on that deployment after I got wounded, I was medevaced for about 3 or 4 weeks. I was finally able to get back out to the FOB with my guys, and we were fortunate on that deployment. We're working exclusively with SF and Navy SEAL units, right? They've
Mhm.
got big budgets. They've got a nice satellite. We got fast internet, living in a mud hut on the Pakistani border. And so with the encouragement of my platoon leader at the time, I start knocking out these online college classes on that Afghanistan deployment. So between my two Afghanistan deployments, I'd finished 2 years of online college, all my general studies. So
Okay.
when it came down to that last deployment, the 15-month one, which is very long, I was really contemplating whether I was going to get out. I get orders sent to me, and they said, your next duty station, you're going to go train new lieutenants in Oklahoma. Now, nothing against lieutenants or the great state of Oklahoma. I had absolutely zero desire to do that.
Right.
And so that really kind of solidified it for me. So December 2008, I get out of the Army. January 2009, I'm sitting in a college classroom with a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids. Their biggest worry is, where's the party? Who's going to buy the beer? I'm 26, felt like the old man on campus. Like they're looking at like, what the heck is this old guy doing here? Obviously, in hindsight, 26 is still really young. So yeah, so that was sort of my transition. It was, I had a plan. I'd seen so many people get out, and they talk a big game,
Yep.
but then you see when they're out, or you kind of see their Facebook, and they're not really doing anything. So I knew I had to like put steps into action. early on. So on that last deployment, I had rented an apartment in the city where I was going to go to college. I had been accepted into college already. I had bought a car that was waiting for me. I had
Awesome.
concrete steps.
Yeah.
I enrolled in college classes. I mean, I registered. I was ready to go.
Awesome. Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back. All right, back talking with Army veteran Patrick Nelson with Loyalty Point Leadership. All right, had a great plan into college. Things went pretty well for you at school. What happened? What happened after college?
Yeah, I actually, Joe, I had three things really working in my favor at that time. I was going to the university where at the time the Minnesota Vikings held their annual training camp. I was majoring in sport management, and I was very fortunate to be named the first ever NFL-Pat Tillman Military Scholar. We all know who Pat Tillman was. After he was killed in Afghanistan by friendly fire in April 2004, his family, the NFL, created this foundation. It gave me great contacts with the NFL. So those three things, perfect combination, actually led to me working with the Minnesota Vikings in football operations. It was my dream job with my hometown team. Anything players and coaches needed off the field, I'm their guy, right? Booking flights, hotels, catered meals, ticket requests, handing out their pay stubs. Talk about a very humbling experience. Not as glamorous as what some people might think, and didn't take me long to realize it's not what I wanted to do. But at the same time, like many veterans, I was facing a lot of struggles in that transition. So when I got out, I had two surgeries right away to repair some of the stuff from when I was wounded. And I actually got hooked on Vicodin and morphine for 5 years.
Jeez.
A very common thing that we've seen with a lot of veterans. And it was a situation where I didn't even realize I was hooked on this stuff. I wouldn't go anywhere without pills in my pocket. And I accept 100% accountability for it. But the VA certainly made it very easy to keep sending these pills in the mail to me. And I just kept taking them. And, thankfully, I was able to kick that. I started doing some speaking on my own. I actually did an event with former General Stanley McChrystal. People were asking me to come tell my story, and him and I shared the stage at an event, and him and I talked afterwards, and that kind of propelled me into looking at it in a business. And so I got hired by a leadership development consulting firm, spent a little over 5 years with them, did a lot of cool work. China, Africa, all over Europe, all over the States, companies ranging from Fortune 500s to small family-owned businesses. Went back to college, got another master's degree from Pepperdine University in organization development. And then February 18th, 2020 comes. And I'm sitting right here where I'm at right now. And I get a call saying my services are no longer needed. I got fired.
Yep.
And I cried. I was a sole income earner for our family. My wife stayed home with our two daughters. And we were actually 12 months into the adoption process. So February 2019, while I'm still fully employed, making really good money, we begin this adoption journey. December 2019, we finally get matched with a birth mother who's due to give birth in March. At the beginning of February 2019, I'm actually pulling into the parking lot of a client in Anchorage, Alaska, go to lead a full day leadership workshop. And I get a call from my wife saying, hey, the adoption agency needs to speak with us. And we found out, I hopped on the conference call, found out the birth mother was scamming us and the agency we're working through. So we lost out on $15,000, which it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But what hurt worse than that financial loss was that emotional investment we had in this journey. A few weeks later, I lose my job. I'm down here crying. I've kind of always been a glass half full kind of guy. I wasn't going to throw this pity party for too long. An hour later, wiped my tears away, went to the Secretary of State website. I registered a new business and I got my butt back to work. I wouldn't necessarily recommend to people to start a business at the beginning of a worldwide pandemic, but at the same time, I'm not unique and I'm not special. It's not like, oh, poor me, right? I'm the only one being impacted. Every one of us was impacted one way or the other, and I viewed it as an opportunity. And I've been grinding every single day since then. And I like to joke with people, there's being a business owner during COVID wasn't that bad because the government had these wonderful programs, PPP loans, right? We've heard of them. These are forgivable loans. You follow the rules, we'll give you money. You don't have to pay it back. Well, in order to qualify for that, you need to have started your business by February 15th. I started my business February 18th. I missed it by 3 days. So, I had no benefits. I had nothing going in my favor. But again, I viewed it as an opportunity. And I've just been grinding every single day since then. And I've got my first book coming out here very soon. Just a lot of exciting things going on, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So you're somewhat of a coach and leadership development type guy. how did you arrive in that industry? Like, how did you go with that?
Yeah, one thing I've always been comfortable speaking in public. That's sort of the one thing that I think God blessed me with at a young age. I've never been very athletic. I'm not a handyman around the house, but I can get up and talk in front of people. And then through my experiences, I've really learned the power of my story and how I can inspire others and influence the future. And so fortunately, I'm able to do that. People hire me to come in. I do keynotes at a lot of conferences speaking about leadership, especially helping people realize that you don't have to be the boss to be the leader, right? You look at the military, Joe, we know the most bureaucratic organization out there. You wear your rank on your uniform
Yep.
every single day. Everybody knows like where you stand, but you look at those lowest levels, those E4 and below, you can still pick out the leaders,
Oh yeah.
right? And they're not in charge of anything, and it's their behaviors, right? It's how they act.
Right.
And so it's being able to get people to realize, right? You can develop your empathy. You can be more self-aware. You can be more accountable. You can be a better listener, all this kind of stuff. And so really bringing that message to people is something that, really is purpose-driven my life.
Yeah. Did your NFL connection that happened back in college, did that come back around?
It did, I ended up working full time for the Vikings, and it was great. It just, I kind of realized it's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And yeah, I can't believe I get paid money to do what I do now. I'm so excited about it. The business, it's a roller coaster. Anybody that's an entrepreneur will tell you that. I still get excited every time I get a phone call or an email from a potential client. But I love what I'm able to do. I love the flexibility of my job. And, I love that I'm able to really kind of make my family part of it as well. I can bring them on the road with me whenever I want.
So beginning of COVID, you got fired. You're gonna start your own. You had some other personal things just smack you upside the head. You're gonna get into leadership development, personal development, coaching, that type of industry. How did you end up getting your first client?
Basically, massaging those networks that I already had,
Uh-huh.
relying on people that had already known me, already liked me, trusted me. And yeah, thankfully I had a few clients that really wanted to continue to work with me. And if it wasn't for them, honestly, I'm not quite sure I could have, really managed everything at the beginning. But it was after that first year, it was just grinding. It's hard. It's amazing what happens when you just work hard. Good things can happen. I'm not a very smart person. I've had my IQ tested. I'm not very intelligent, right? I'm not a great business person either. I can tell you that. I'm not afraid to admit I'm not a great salesperson. But when you work hard, good things happen. And I've worked my tail off, and I've had great things happen. I've been very, very fortunate, very blessed.
Awesome. And so February 2020, by March, April, everything starts shutting down. Were you doing stuff via Zoom, or are you still able to get some in person?
Yeah, so it was actually March 12th, 2020. I did an in-person. Well, I was in person. It was in Columbus, Ohio, speaking at a conference. 36 hours prior, though, they called me, said, "We still want you to come here, but we're going to broadcast this virtually." So I'm in this huge convention center on a stage, and there's just cameras. There's nobody there. So you have no idea. That's my first, foray into the virtual world. You're not getting any feedback from the audience. You're like, are these jokes landing with people? What's going on?
Right.
And yeah, so from there, did a lot of virtual events, and I actually started traveling again in person in July of 2020 with a couple of clients that were, very frontline type employees, essential workers,
Mm,
and getting back out there with them.
yeah. And so loyalty point leadership. So where are you at nowadays? And talk about where you started and where you've come to at this point.
Yeah, the business is booming. My calendar is full, and now it's to the point where that's not a bad problem to have when you're a solo entrepreneur, to be very, very busy. But
Sure.
it's getting to the point now where I can fortunately be a little bit more selective with the work that I take in. I
Mhm.
can say no. I don't need to jump at every single opportunity if I don't think it's a good fit. And I can also carve in that time that I want for my family. At the same time, too, I can't take my foot off the gas. You can't just sit there and think that, oh man, things are going great, and it's just my phone's going to keep ringing off the hook. I know it's not going to happen. I got to continue to be proactive with it. And my book coming out here on July 9th is just one of those ways that I've remained proactive. being able to get my name out there and just continuing to speak in front of large audiences.
Yeah. So tell us about your book.
Yeah, it's called Frontline Leadership: How to Eliminate Complacency and Build All-In Engagement. For a long time, I was doing a lot of speaking events. A lot of people come up to me afterwards like, hey, where can I buy your book? You have this amazing story. And I don't like writing. I never had any desire to write a book. And I said, sorry, it's nothing I'm interested in. And finally, it's just like so many people. I said, you know what? Okay, let me check into this. And I actually did the pay to play option where I paid this publisher that partnered me with a developmental editor, and we were going to write this book.
Uh-huh.
And we got like 2 months into the process, and it just didn't feel very natural. I didn't like where it was going. And so I washed my hands of it. I lost a little bit of money on it, but hey, that's what happens. 6 months later, I get a message on LinkedIn from somebody at Wiley, which is one of the largest publishers when it comes to leadership books, saying, hey, I've seen some of your stuff on LinkedIn. I think you got a pretty good story in you. We'd like to publish your book. And I think more than anything, I felt very flattered that Wiley would approach me, and partnered with them, had a great editor, knocked that book out. And just really excited because it's an inspiring book with a lot of my stories, a lot of my failures, but at the same time, it's very practical. It provides very practical tips for people to take away. There's a lot of great inspirational speakers out there who can tell some really good stories, tug on the heartstrings and everything. But I really pride myself on having that, and also the practicality behind the message. I don't want my message to be like a sunburn that wears off after 3 days. I want to equip people with something that they can take away and do something with.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. You're actually having an impact on people, that they're actually coming up asking about your book before you even had a book. I've had a number of authors on the show over the years, and one of the things about writing a book, I always say that every veteran has a book in them, some kind of story in there, but there's lots of different ways to write a book. Most of us think, I got to sit down with a notebook and start writing, or sit down in front of Microsoft Word and just start typing. That is the really hard way to write the book, all by yourself. If you've got it in you, then good on you. But at some point, you will need to bring other people into the mix. And if you're going to do that, you might as well bring other people into the mix from the beginning. Maybe get a little guidance, a little help. They have ghostwriters, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not your thoughts or your words. They're just kind of pulling it out of you and making it sound better than maybe you might write it yourself. So what I would say to people is, if you're interested in writing a book, there's a number of different ways of going about it, and what people that will actually help you develop the topic or the story, something that may sell a little better than what you might come up with on your own. So the other thing about writing a book, especially when you're in the kind of industry that you're in, is it makes you an authority in your niche if you have a book. And not going to ask how many books you've sold or if you've made millions on your books, whatever. Even if you don't make any money on your book, by writing a book, it helps make you an authority, because people can read your book and then they get to know you that way, just like listening to you on a podcast. So a number of different angles, different reasons and different motivations for writing books. You're not trying to be, some famous author that's going to sell millions of copies. It's just another tool in your toolbox as far as who you are and what you are. And you need to be writing a book when people come up and ask you how they can actually buy your book.
Right. Yeah. Joe, you're right. First of all, you said like every veteran has a unique story, and I 100% agree with you. And that's what I tell anytime I'm speaking in front of veterans. I'm like, look, this is just my story. We've all had our own unique experiences. And I really encourage every veteran to get out there and to share that message, whether it's them standing up and speaking, or whether it is if they want to pursue writing a book. And like you said, there's a lot of different services available to do it. And I encourage people, like, if it's something you're thinking about, like, just dive in head first, like make it happen. Why not? Unless you're a big name, maybe like Jocko or something like that, you're probably going to make some good money off your book, but you don't really make a lot of money from book sales. It's a great calling card, right? It's a great marketing collateral for you to have. You never know who's going to get a copy of that book from somebody or from somewhere, and all of a sudden they read it and they're like, whoa, I like what this guy has to say. Maybe we should bring him into our company.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, how do we find out more about Loyalty Point Leadership?
Yeah, you can check out the website, loyaltypointleadership.com. It's got all the information on the book, where you can buy it. It's got some demo videos of me, kind of some overviews of different topics that I speak about and ways to get in touch with me. And you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with people and just, trade some messages and hear about your service.
So who's your ideal customer these days? Now that you are where you're at this point, what kind of customers you looking for? If somebody's listening to this podcast, what makes you a good fit for them?
Yeah, honestly, really right now, probably about 60 to 70% of my work is actually safety focused, like workplace safety.
Hmm.
And I'm not an OSHA type safety person. I can't talk to people about, lockout, tag out, or working at heights. I don't know any of that stuff, but I look at it from a leadership standpoint, especially you've seen my sort of signature story.
Mhm.
When I was wounded on June 8th, 2005 in Afghanistan, a group of 10 of us were standing to the side of a Chinook. We're going to resupply some ammunition. 107 landed right next to us. Two soldiers literally right next to me were killed. 8 of us were wounded. One of the soldiers that was killed was Emmanuel Hernandez. Right before we rolled out to the LZ, he hopped in the back of the Humvee, and I turned around. I was going to yell at him because he wasn't supposed to be heading out to the LZ that day, just supposed to be hanging back. And so I turned around, but I was like, you know what? I value that kind of work ethic in my soldiers. Like, this kid wants to come lift some heavy boxes. Great, cool. And I was turning back around, but out of the corner of my eye, I noticed he didn't have his helmet on. And so I literally opened my mouth to chew into his butt. I realized I didn't have mine on either. It's obviously kind of hard for me to say something if I'm not doing the right thing. So I didn't say anything. And Emmanuel took shrapnel through his head and was killed.
Mm.
I was peppered in the back with some shrapnel, very small holes, very minor injuries. And it was something where I had beat myself up for a long time after that. The drinking, the addiction to the Vicodin and morphine, but thankfully realizing, especially when it comes to workplace safety, like that story can inspire others to be able to speak up in those moments. It's something that they can remember. And so I've honestly found a sort of a renewed purpose with that. So look, I joined the regular Army right after 9/11, like a lot of people did.
Mm-hmm.
Signed up for all those patriotic reasons, but Joe, when you're in, it's just another job. You're not thinking about America, right? And it wasn't until I got out, I kind of become this lazy college kid, and I start reflecting, like, man, I used to have such a bigger purpose. I used to be part of something really special.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm on a futon playing PlayStation. Like, how am I ever going to have that again in my life? And honestly, I found it a lot through the safety work I do,
Mm.
being able to share my stories. And when you have, people coming up to you afterwards, like, man, that really inspired me to be able to speak up. Or people afterwards, months later will send you a message like, hey, we had this, and I said this because I remembered your story. And it's not going to be the same as serving in the military, but it's really given me a renewed purpose again in life.
Wow. Yeah, have that kind of an impact. So, um, well, I always like to. We're getting close to the end of our time. I always like to give you the last word. If you're talking to somebody like yourself, still in the military or on their way out, just recently got out, they're looking to get into entrepreneurship, looking to start their own business, run their own shows sometime. What kind of advice comes to mind?
Well, kind of two things. The first one's very simple. Just do it. Like, why not? You've got one life here. Dive head first and just do it. Second thing is surround yourself with the right people. I've been fortunate to have great mentors in my life that I surrounded myself with, that I could go ask for advice and support, and they helped me. But the thing is, I was kind of forced into entrepreneurship. I never had an inkling to start my own business ever. I was always afraid.
Huh.
What about the taxes and the accounting and the paperwork? And I don't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. I'm marketing and sales. I get up and speak. That's what I'm good at. And so I kind of let that fear really hold me back, and I was thrust into it. But looking back, I was like, why didn't I do this earlier?
Mm-hmm.
But again, that was my journey that I was on. But if you're having that inkling, if you have that desire to do it, like, why not? Just get in there and do it. The worst that can happen, obviously, is you're going to fail, and you're going to find out, hey, maybe it's not for me, or maybe I need to try again and do something a little bit different. But dive in and make it happen.
Awesome. Well, hey Patrick, thanks for sharing your veteran entrepreneurship story, and we look forward to seeing your future success. So keep at it, doing awesome.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate what you do as well. Thank you, brother.
You bet. Thanks, appreciate it. All right, these two veterans are Oscar Mike.